at is their use of the flashback. Now, this is a nonlinear show, but they use the heck out of some flashbacks. There are 9 flashbacks in 55 minutes, and they're not quick flashes. There is a series of 3 quick flashes. I didn't even count those. So if you wanted to, you could say 12 flashbacks. But we go 6 times to 4 years previous. And that time, those flashbacks are given to us to show the relationship being set up between Xavier and the president, and also understanding how Xavier and his kids ended up in the underground bunker. And then there's also the flashbacks. 3 times we flash back to day 0, with day 1 being the actual real time of what's going on in the world. Day 0 is the day before, and we go back 3 times to look at that and see what happened. And that's through Xavier's perspective of what happened on that day, and we're just being fed that a little bit at a time. So tremendous craft here of taking a story, chopping it up, and figuring out the best way to present it on a platter. And that's what's going on. This is one of the things that Fogelman's very, very good at. If you watch This Is Us, like I did, that whole show for hundreds of, over 100 episodes is getting a little bit here, a little bit there, and then by the end you have the full picture. And I'm guessing when Dan Fogelman went to Penn, studied literature and creative writing, one of those classes, they said, you never start a story with someone waking up in the morning. That is number 1 sin, no. But the Dan Fogelman School of Writing said, forget that. I can do whatever I want. So this tremendous Emmy-nominated show begins with eyes opening up in bed, and we're starting our day, and we're slowly, get ready for the day, one baby step at a time. When we dive into page 1, rather than getting a snazzy little paragraph about this main character that tells us his internal struggles and all that, we actually learn about this character over a page and a quarter. That is your character introduction. We learn about Xavier with 3 quick setups. It begins in the bed, then in the closet, and then in the kitchen. And if you go through this line by line, you will see that, my goodness, you talk about show, don't tell. There's no words, so there's no telling, right? But we learn so much about this character in a short amount of time. So I'm going to tell you just in this 1.25 pages here what we learn. We learn that he goes by X. He doesn't have many friends. Someone is missing in the bed that he cares about. He's very unhappy. He wears a weird Fitbit type thing that we don't know what that is. He gets up early, so he's very disciplined. He wears a short, sharp suit. He dresses nicely, but it looks like a uniform because that's all he's got in his closet pretty much. He works out in the morning. Again, very disciplined. He's also ripped, so disciplined. He has a nasty scar on his shoulder. That's probably important. He's a responsible parent, making the school lunches for his kids. He's a loving parent, leaving these cute notes. He's funny because the notes are almost laugh out loud funny because of how corny and dad jokey they are. His kids are obviously old enough to be left alone because he leaves and goes for a jog, right? And he feels guilty. This is the most important one. The look on his face when he smiles, how he shuts that down. Like he feels guilty about being happy. So obviously there's a fresh wound there, and he is not ready to accept any sort of happiness in his life. We learn all that very quickly as this person wakes up in the morning and goes through his morning routine. So don't tell your writing professor about this. They'll be very upset. So it got me wondering, was this just a one-time thing because it's Xavier, the main character that we're going to be following for multiple seasons? Well, probably for that page and a quarter, but it is a technique that they use to introduce other characters as well. In fact, when Cal Bradford, the president, is being introduced, there's no paragraph that tells you, how great he is and what he's thinking. We learn about him through Xavier's perspective before we even see Cal Bradford. Very clever. It says here in the teleplay that, he is walking around looking at the photos of a handsome man. He's in his late 40s to 50s here, hard to tell, tall, slim, extremely handsome. This is Cal Bradford. In one of the pictures, he's shaking hands with the Pope. In another, he's laughing with Bruce Springsteen and Bono. In another, he's being sworn in as President of the United States because he once was. So remember, we didn't know this at this point. We just know he's in a nice house and with a very powerful person. Fogelman and his team make the choice to speak to the reader in these asides. We've seen quite a bit of this recently in the screenplays that we've broken down. They do it for two reasons. One for clarification and one for suspense, which is the more interesting of the two and something you don't see as much. For the clarification, though, one of the things about Fogelman and his writing is that he wants to make sure that you know. He double pumps quite a bit. He tells you and then he tells you again. He doesn't want you to miss anything. This is part of his voice, part of his writing. On 45, when Jane and Billy are in the office, the action line says, as she walks past him, they ever so carefully brush hands with one another. So that obviously, okay, they must have some sort of romantic connection. If you're paying attention in your reading, that should be obvious. But then the double pump here is he wants to make sure you know. So he gives you an aside. And the aside is, oh, wow, there's something romantic happening between these two. And it's in italics. Wants it to stand out on the page. We have been seeing the aside writing quite a bit in the scripts that we've broken down. Greta Gerwig does it quite a bit. Aaron Sorkin, the master of it, who does it a lot, is Ari Aster. I'll give you another example of the clarification on 46. It says, a female agent has entered the room, and by the way, everyone straightens. It's clear she's in charge. This is Robinson, but they haven't named her yet. And then the aside is here. It says, it is clear that this is Cal's earlier video love interest, the one with the hoop earrings. So earlier in the script, through the monitor, they see her, and he's also identified these earrings, and they saw the earrings on her. So pointing this out for clarification to make sure you understand this is the same person. But here's the more interesting aside that I was talking about for suspense. Let's look at a couple examples. On page 52, it says, a woman with groceries opens a car using her wristband as well. In fact, all the cars along the street here are identical, like zip cars. And then it says, as an aside in italics, odd. So I want to make sure when you're reading, you don't miss that you see, okay, in fact, if you did miss it and you saw, odd, you would go back and be like, let me read that again. What's odd about that? Oh, that all the cars? Okay. Starting to plant that idea. Another example is on page 3, and this is when Xavier takes us all on a jog through town so that we can check it out. This is another script writing trick, giving us the tour of what's going on. But it said, they show us some things that look a little off, maybe just a tiny bit off here. And then it says that there seems to be a weight on all of them, a heaviness, a sadness. Or maybe it's just the early hour. Maybe we're imagining it. So that's the aside there saying, look, this was a little off, but maybe we're just imagining. It's not like crazy off. It's not like super weird stuff's happening.